Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm starting pretty late. Hoping to get to bed in the next 2 hours, so I'm gonna try to make this a quick one. I'm just gonna keep it 2D to keep it simple, so maybe I can focus on the textures and just getting that shape right. So I'm just gonna copy the silhouette, use this reference with this handy PureRef program, which is free. Really useful if you're making art, because then you can just use reference. So I like to have my shader editor brought out like that, um, as opposed to underneath. And then, yeah, and then so I'll preview this here. So make sure I'm in rendered view. Because I'm going to be 2D, I'm just going to keep it in Eevee, because that's a quicker preview than if I were to use cycles most of the time. Cycles doesn't have to compile this stuff, so there's less loading when you make an update, but it takes longer for it to become not pixelated. I don't know, maybe it's actually pretty similar, the way it comes out, maybe. Okay, so what I'm going to do right here is separate this XYZ node, and if I plug into subtract, I get a diagonal line, just like I did in my last tutorial where I recreated Van Gogh's painting. Well, tutorial, live stream, that's what I mean, yeah. I guess I'm used to being on YouTube and people talking about tutorials, and I'm making tutorials and stuff, and you can check out some of those, but yeah. So I'm going to try to make the top half, and then I think the tusk I'm going to add as a separate element, kind of masked in. So just think of the most extreme parts. So that's the back, there's the top of the head, and yeah, and notice like we're gonna do this in two parts, like the top part and the under part, because we can't get under with these curves. Basically only just put a blanket over what we're making. And if I put that there, so make sure that sticks down. We're not getting the result we want, so let's see why that is. Maybe this part's throwing it off. I guess I wasn't watching it while I was just going to reset this curve. Oh, right. So I'm going to put this in here. Yeah, that's what we want. Put that up there. Tail, just a short tail there. I think we'll just make that a separate element as well, so we can adjust that better later. Okay, and then let's create the undercurve. So if I Control-Shift-D, oh, so let's put on shortcut keys so you can see what I'm doing right here. So Control-Shift-D, I used while highlighting that to copy it over. We'll stay connected over here. And yeah, we'll just bring these down. Maybe let's mix them together so that we can see how they fit. So I'm just going to reset this curve just so that it's independent of the top one. Just draw that over again. So if I just start with that shape, And I can add the feet. Let's just see how this mixes together. I think I want the inverse of this, so I'm just going to use color invert to quickly and not get the result I want. Try subtracting by -1. That's another way to get inverse. Hello, Swathi. Good to welcome to the channel, or the live stream. This should be 0. Oh yeah, because that was 0.5, but we should have changed it to 0. And yeah, so we can use that to mask this out. So now, because this top part's black and this part's black, we can mix that with the multiply. And then, yeah, so if I plug that in, change this to multiply, yeah, we'll start getting values. If I turn that up, and it's flipping because these need to be clamped, because negative values, this shows up as black, but they're, if I don't clamp it, they're values that are negative. And when you multiply negative by negative, you get a positive. So to do that, I guess I clamp either one of these or both of them. I just want this part to become at least 0 or a negative value for over here. And yeah, so again, so black is 0 and white is 1, and then the gray, everything else is something in between that. So add a curve for a foot. It's a little hard to grab from the bottom, so I'm just gonna bring this up, grab from there, drag it down. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, Swathi. We can talk about anything, if anything Blender related. I might be of help, or anybody on the chat. Yeah, so it's pretty tedious that you have to move these over by 1. But again, this is a challenge. This isn't how you would normally do something, unless it was for Nodevember, probably. I mean, I think it's good to practice shading and stuff, but that's kind of the extent of it, is practice. Take what you know to make really cool materials, sort of get in that mindset. If you don't have Substance Designer, you can sort of play around with Blender, even though it's pretty different. Main things are, like, Substance Designer is pixel based, so when you zoom in on something, it's pixelated, but that has its pros where you can, like, blur things and put a gradient on the blur, whereas you can't do that in Blender. Yeah, so we have the shape here. I think that's pretty good. So I think maybe I want to add some more texture right there. And it's basically the whole under part except the feet, but the feet I'm just cutting off at the bottom. So I think I can just take the Y. So I'm going to add distortion to this Y part, and that should make it spiky. With yeah, I'll use the noise texture and just put in there. Interesting. Oh yeah, so that's it's expected. Well, let's just work with it and maybe separate this so that, yeah, this is only a directional noise. Yeah, and then let's make the, yeah, and we can position this if we want. We might scale it as well, so we're going to do that. If I change this to texture, this will scale after I position it, which I typically prefer. Yeah, so now we have a little more room to work with. Yeah, so right here, to make this tusk, I'm just going to start with a sphere. So if I use a gradient texture and change this to sphere, well, really a circle, but you have to make it through a sphere. I mean, it's a circle because it's 2D, right? So, yeah. Because typically, like, these other mapping coordinates are 3-dimensional, but UV is 2D, so U and V are the two axes of that. Green and red corresponds to this as well. Yeah, and so if I have that, and then I can use another one of these vector mapping nodes to position it. And I can use another math node so that I can scale it on both sides at the same time. So vector math nodes affect the 3 values that are positioned, so red, blue, and green. You know, in this case, UV there are just 2, but you can still have 3D textures in a 2D space, as we can see here. Yeah, so if I position this, see how it goes. I think I want to shift it with this, so I'm just going to put this mapping node into here. Seems a little redundant having 2 mapping nodes, but we actually want this to move within this. So, yeah, maybe just make it a little wide. And put it somewhere like there. Now if I move this one, we can just shift both of them over. Again, Control-Shift-D to copy this while this is still connected, and use another vector mapping node, and then mix these 2 together. So this will be the factor, and I'll just set this to black. And so currently they're in the same position. Make this one a little bit smaller. We'll move it to the left a little bit. Yeah, and then just gonna make that a solid value. So make that greater than, and as close to 0 as possible, but not 0. Right, just like that. Yeah, and now we're starting to get our tusk. So I think I'll just stretch that out right here. Let's see how it looks when we combine these. So instead we're going to plug this one in. Alright, so we have our tusk, we have the head, and so we're getting all those essential shapes in there. Unfortunately, you can't get too detailed with the curves right here. Like I can't just draw out all the scruffs right here. I guess if I move that over, it's easier to reach other points. So if I move that and then grab this curve here. Just kind of a workaround since these are it's hard to make a new one when these are so close together. new point. Okay, we can see how this tail kind of tapers off. Let's see how we can make that work right now, because this currently doesn't have a tail. Excuse me. Separate. And then excuse me. Do subtract, that'll put it in the center, and then with an absolute value, we can flip it. So these math nodes just affect one value, while the vector nodes affect multiple ones. Because positions are based on, or vectors are based on 3 values, x, y, and z. Yeah, and so right here with subtract, we can multiply it by this gradient. So we can sort of control a tail right there. Maybe I can try putting a less than a greater than, see if that profile is, if that shape is something that we want. See, that's looking pretty sharp. So that looks pretty good. And I'm going to use another math node, click down there. Just shift that there. And then just to get rid of that side, I think I'm just going to use another mixed node on this part. Try screen, we'll lighten that side up. Yeah, okay, there we got a tail. And if we just put that at the very end of it, we can take a look. So right here, and then another mixed node of a sharp fall off. Yeah, so let's reposition this. So vector mapping, just put that over there. Getting the tail in the donkey. Okay. We're missing that trunk right there. So let's do a similar process with the tusk. So to create that, we're going to just going to copy this node group right here, and let's see. We'll change the positions around. We'll start with the bigger one, so because this one depends on the whole scale right here. And then, yeah, just put this in position. This area is all going to be brown, so I'm just going to make this one thing and then mix the tusks in later. What is this? It's the tail, I think. To color this, I'm just going to use multiply, set that in here, and just I think I'll adjust some of these values. This is the tail right here. If I sample that, yeah. So I'm just going to adjust the intensity of these other parts, the multiply node. Yeah, so that looks good. And let's see, so we have this kind of shadow in this area. Maybe we can multiply that separately. You know, it's kind of like brightness coming from up here. Yeah, let's just multiply that. But the factor, I'm gonna, if I use this position node, let's base it off of this one so that if we move it, it'll move with it. This says a rotation. Interesting. No. Oh yeah, because we're taking x and y. We're taking a vector, but we want a just one gradient. So separate that. Yeah, so that'll give us what we want. So we want the factor, we want it to only multiply in the lower part of the image, so that lower part is going to be white. Try using cardinal. Just trying different gradients to get different effects. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of a modern art. A woolly mammoth. Yesterday I had a really long and stream. You know, it's 2.5 hours, and I was really feeling that one. Not really feeling this one as much, but I'm just glad I did something today, and that you guys learned something. So it's nice to keep that simple. Oh yeah, the background. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that can be. I think that's gonna be my final change right here. So, can make it kind of smoky and, yeah. Oh yeah, brighter. Yeah, I know what you mean. So, if I, yeah, let's do that, and then and I'll sign off from that. So we have, yeah, so now we can isolate the darkest values. If we were to make this white, I think it's only affecting this inner part, so we basically have to flip that. I think we can control that with the color ramp, just tweak it. So if we flip this, notice, of that, you wanted brightness, now we have more brightness, you know, all the brightness you could ever want. And then, yeah, and then we could use a Voronoi texture and make it smooth, and use a noise texture to maybe add more distortion. Yeah, so let's make it kind of big. And let's make it a 2D texture so there's not variation in the intensity of the points. And yeah, so if I have this coordinate system right plugged in here, I'll just distort it with linear light, which pushes things above 0.5 up and things below 0.5 down, which so that's perfect for creating distortion. It's just pushing things in different directions and in an even way. Yeah, so we get this nice kind of look. If I increase my noise size, we can almost has a blurring effect if we really went through with it. And then I just put it like that, and yeah, so thanks for the feedback, Swathi. I hope you're having a good day or had a good day. And yeah, so let's plug that in there. Can make this a little darker. Oh, turn that saturation down. I want it to be more gradual, so let's try B-spline. Yeah, the blur node, the thing about blur node is it's computationally expensive. There's been conversation about that, you know. Let's see, but yeah, for example, let's see this checker texture, right? It's a sharp line. If we wanted to blur this, we could But if I, so if I plug this in, this is the closest to blurring you'll get in a vector, because the difference between Substance and Blender is that it's all vector based, so it's based on the position of things, and so it never forgets things. So when you blur something, so like here, I'm using this noise texture blur because noise is random. It's just randomly distributing stuff. Like when things are rough, it's the reflection is kind of being blurred because this the really tiny surface details are displacing the reflection in random directions. But like this is the closest you can ever come to a blur node in a vector-based node system. Like it'd be nice if Blender had another texture, like texture nodes, which they used to have, but they no longer do because it was just I guess kind of difficult to maintain. People weren't really using it, but I think that'll come back, especially when they implement like procedural brushes and stuff, and I think that would be a great next step. I haven't heard a lot about development for that, but yes, because if you look at this, it blurs, and we could bake this out, and then you'd have a nice gradient. But like, let's say if we were to, this looks like a soft texture, I mean, aside from the graininess of it, but if, say, we were to put that into principled BSDF, plugged it in normal, but we'll used a bump node, and this was plugged in the height. You get geometry nodes. Yeah, geometry nodes are a different branch where it's actually procedural modeling, where you're adding geometry. Whereas the stuff that I've been working with is shader nodes. It'd be cool to maybe in one of these videos I can do a video on shader nodes. But yeah, so right here, I guess it is kind of working with the reflection, but if you were to, it's not like you can, once you have this map, if you put a gradient in here, like you can't just control the height there. Because it's like all these little points that it's running through are, so that's why blur node doesn't really work in vector-based texturing. And it makes, for shading, it makes sense that it's vector shading, but yeah, and that's why I think it's probably better using pixel-based system for texture generation in general. And like our node systems would be easier if we had texture nodes that generated the material and then put that in, but yeah. So Guisha, not much help. When you say now much help, geometry nodes from 2.92 for Nodevember, do you mean not much help, or like those nodes are really helpful? Have you been working with them, or? I was just about to head out, so just stay in the line. Give you a few minutes to respond. Yeah, so we have this. Oh yeah, and then let's put that into there. So that's the final result. Oh, you thought that was helpful? Okay. Are you asking for help with geometry nodes, or are you saying that they're helpful? Yeah, so if I were to sum up the difference between vectors and pixels, is that pixels forget, like it has to, when it blurs something, it creates a new texture, and then it does something with that. Whereas vectors, it always calls all the way back to the beginning. When you're generating substance, it kind of runs like that, but it's kind of, yeah, it's like a game of telephone, whereas this is kind of more like, yeah. I mean, I'm just an artist, so, I mean, I studied programming in college, but, you know, I haven't looked too far into how the vectors work, but that's kind of what it seems, the difference seems to be. So if you guys don't have any more, since I haven't seen any more questions, I'm gonna go ahead and get some sleep, and I hope you guys have a great day or night, wherever you are, and take care. I'm doing these live streams every day, and yeah, I'll be posting some other videos on sculpting and texturing and modeling, and yeah, so keep an eye out for those. I try to keep them really informative and helpful and original. So yeah, take care.